Hi, everyone. This is Bernie at E&T-TV, Education and Training Television. Today, I have a great interview with Neil Theisen. Neil is the language and development, English language development and team leader / coordinator at DSST Aurora Science and Technology Middle School in Aurora, Colorado. This interview does take quite a while, so what I've done is I've chaptered the sections, and the sections go as follows. We have an introduction where Neil talks about his credentials and experience. Then we talk about his life just before the coronavirus hit. Then we talk about what it's like now, what he's doing to cope, and how he's adjusting. We also talk about the future, what's going to happen in 6 months, a year, maybe 5 years down the road. We also discuss opportunities, what's going to happen as a result of this situation, and how to position yourself well in that regard. And we also talk about Neil's call to action, what he thinks people should do to really have a positive impact and an overall positive effect on this situation that we're all in. Remember, these are all chaptered in the video, and there should be easy for you to find if you're looking for specific information. Also, please remember, like the video, comment on the video, and subscribe to the channel. Welcome to the interview today. We're here with Neil Theisen. Neil's in Colorado. Quick background on Neil. First of all, I want to say thanks for doing the interview, Neil. Welcome. Good to see you.
You too, Bernie. Thanks for having me.
All right. Excellent. Good. It's good news today here in Vietnam. Looks like we're going to be doing a little bit of easing on the social distancing, so I'm in a good mood. It's a good day here. But you're in Colorado. And I want to give you a quick background on your education experience. You have a Master's of Arts with an emphasis in TESOL. You have a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. You have a Bachelor of Arts in Economics. You have a teaching license in the state of Colorado. You also have the IB diploma program for language and literature. You also have a certificate of English language teaching to adults, the CELTA certificate. You also have 12 years experience. Let me make sure I get these countries right. You taught in Korea, Macedonia. You were a Peace Corps volunteer in Romania. You taught in Japan and in Vietnam, where we met about 7 years ago. Does that cover it?
I think that's good.
Okay, excellent. So Neil, just want to go over a few questions. This is going to be something. Although this is a professional context, it's also very informal. Just give me your best answer. Whatever comes to mind with these questions.
Sure.
This is a little bit. This is kind of a serious time for most people, and we're all. This is kind of limbo for most people, for a lot of people, and particularly this recent pandemic has caused a lot of changes in education and training. So what the point of the interview today is to go over the recent past, what your life was like in the end of 2019, what it's like now, and what you think it's going to be like in the future. So let's begin by talking about normal life, November, December, before winter break in 2019. Give us the overview, the 30,000-foot look down on Neil's life. What was the day in the life of Neil about 3 or 4 months ago?
Just the normal life, wake up, go to work. You got the commute, which you don't have anymore, which has changed, giving me a lot more time to focus on different things. At work, it's changed a lot because I teach 6th grade in an urban environment. Very low income. So I'm dealing with a lot of behavioral stuff, social, emotional stuff, and that it hasn't disappeared, but it's decreased significantly. Now I'm just I'm teaching like content classes, providing support for English language learners within the English and social studies class, which I wasn't doing before. So I mean, my job has changed completely, I would say.
Well, so what? Let's go back like I said, a couple months. So what was normal then? What was the normal day
So,
like? Let's give me an idea of what your professional life, uh, what you went through in a normal day a few months ago.
uh, well, I was teaching a standalone English language development class. So kind
Hmm.
of like, like a pull-out ESL class
Hmm.
for kids with, low English language ability. Uh,
Okay.
and so my day was basically preparing for those classes, teaching those classes, grading assessments for those classes, giving feedback for those classes, just working with the students for those classes. Uh,
Okay.
but we can't do that model really in a distance, by distance. So my job has been integrated more with English language arts and social studies and supporting those classes.
Okay. And what about some of the tech tools that you were using before before the pandemic hit? What were some
Um,
tech tools that you were
I've
using?
been using
Education
Google.
tech.
I've been using Google Classroom for at least like 5 or 6 years now. I can't really imagine teaching a class without Google Classroom. So,
Okay.
and most of our classes in our school use Google Classroom.
Okay.
So kids were already familiar with using Google Classroom. What's really changed is there's more. Obviously, we have to use Microsoft Teams or Zoom to meet and
Hmm.
communicate with our students. So I would say that's really the big change for us is using these like video communication platforms.
Okay. All right. And what do you, in your opinion, what were some things that in education, as far as you're concerned, what were some things that 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 we were doing well before the pandemic? What were some things that were good before that we were doing right, in your opinion?
I mean, one thing I think we've been doing right is because of obviously we face-to-face education is all the student work, the pair work, the group work, the interaction, the social interaction. I really felt like our learning was very student-centered. If you would have walked into my room or the classrooms, you'd see students very engaged and working together. And so, unfortunately, like you can't really see that anymore. I would say
Hmm.
it's a lot more independent and autonomous now, and I feel like they're not learning as much from each other, which I feel like students learn best from each other. And so that element's still there, but we really have to force it on them, make sure they're reaching out to other students and working together. Uh,
Hmm.
but it's not that easy because they're sixth graders. They don't really like just call up a friend to like do some
Yeah.
work, and like the project work is gone. We're doing way less projects. It's just like it's an activity every day, and then the next day is a new activity.
Okay.
The project-based learning, I would say, is just not there anymore, which I would say is
Mm.
unfortunate.
Okay. Um, so those are some of the things you were doing that you think we were doing well. Real quick though, I can see when you're hitting your desk, I think it's shaking your camera.
Oh,
It-
sorry.
no, it's okay. Just want to give you a heads up because it's going to make you look real shaky. Um, another thing, another thing we didn't think about before, right? So what are some things that you think we could have improved that we were not doing well before pre COVID?
Curriculum, at least in America, curriculums are we're really handcuffed to them. A lot of red tape. You at Common Core, I feel like this is really from no child left behind or whatever that education legislation was. Uh, but there's a lot less freedom for teachers. I feel like to be creative and really gauge their learning environment and do what's best. I really feel tied to curriculum and doing what I'm supposed to do so I don't like get reprimanded.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's really how I feel in the States a lot of the time.
Okay. Uh, that's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought of that, comparing that to your experience abroad, and I guess we can kind of go into that a little bit. So, so compare that to when you're teaching abroad. You say you're bound by curriculum. It sounds like it's a bit bureaucratic. What are some things? How would you compare that to, say, teaching in Japan? Were you given more free reign to try different resources, different content, so forth?
Yeah, totally. I mean, these are private schools abroad, so they don't have to. I mean, I have to do what the district tells me to do. All
Hmm.
right. private schools, I got to do what the school tells me to. And generally, schools are, really endorse creativity and let you, try some things out. And then you kind of learn from those experiences if it went well or it didn't, and you adjust uh,
Okay.
by, gathering data and whatnot from whatever you do. Um, One's like an IB curriculum. IB is a set curriculum, but it's a very open curriculum. And they've
Hmm.
done that purposely because they're trying to go global. You can't do that with a very narrow curriculum. Like the curriculum
Hmm.
I teach right now is very prescribed. Every lesson for the whole year is planned out for you, word for word. And they want you to find, and they want you to,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it's, it's like, I feel a bit less creative a lot of times in this position.
Okay. All right. And so, what about? So, you did touch a bit about how your work is now, and you talked about the limited project work and so forth. Um, what do you think about the recent developments? Of course, what are some things that have? Let's talk about positive and negative. The recent developments. What are some positive things that have affected what? The recent developments that have affected your work in a positive way, and some things in a negative way. We can go with a positive first.
Hmm. Work in a positive way. I mean, I would say just collaboration, being able to work with, I would say, teachers who are very knowledgeable. I feel like those have, in terms of my practice, my instructional practice, I felt that's where I've learned the most in life is from other
Hmm.
teachers. Um, and so, and it's good to continue to see that basically. Uh,
Okay.
I can't really like I wouldn't say like I've learned a ton from training courses like IB and stuff like that. I've learned a lot from the people who attend those courses because they're the
Yeah.
ones who are bringing the skills and the knowledge and sharing it. Uh, so that's what I really think makes education positive is just the people you work with in terms of just from an instructional practice, trying to develop your craft.
Well,
Uh,
Neil, you made the point earlier. You talked about how your students learn from each other. That's the same for you. It sounds like it. You
yeah,
learn from other people on your courses.
yeah, it's a good point. So yeah, I would say, I don't know, I got to come up with a term for
We'll
that.
work on that. I'll edit it in. Think with your voice, but I'll come up with a word. Your voice will sound like me when you say it, but uh, all right. That's a positive thing that the recent developments. It sounds like you're leaning on some of your colleagues and going for input and for advice. What about some of the things, the recent developments that have affected your work negatively? What are some things that are really un inconvenient, I guess,
Are we
or
talking about
even
like
worse?
distance, are we talking about through like distance learning?
Well, talking about, well, you're doing exclusively distance learning right now, so I guess, yeah, it would be in that arena. What are some things you think that are not good that have affected your work in a negative way with this new? You mentioned earlier, limited project work. What are some other things that you can think of that are
Yeah,
that
I
are
would
really hindering you?
from working with the students who need a lot of support, special ed kids, English language learners. A lot of them are really struggling in in this type of format.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just hard, they need people to point at stuff. You need to see their work like in the moment and give them, explicit feedback. Uh, so it's a little bit more asynchronous for them, and I find it's really difficult for kids who need a lot of support, I feel.
Okay. And do you think? Well, let's talk about. Well, we'll get back to this in a minute. So you talked about Microsoft Teams, you talked about Zoom. What is some other technology you've integrated as a result of the pandemic? What are some other things that you've used a little
So
more that you've really leaned on?
I would say the key to any school, which gets overlooked a lot of times, is school culture. Uh,
Hmm.
I've worked for a school with no culture, and it's just like a tomb.
Hmm.
My school right now, they are huge on culture. So they meetings multiple times a week, whole school, really building culture, games and activities. So we've had to figure out how to bring the tech, use tech so we can still develop that culture, bring everyone together. So we've been using stuff like TikTok, Flipgrid, We've been having all types of competitions with our homerooms about, work completion, attendance, awards, and
Okay.
they're posting videos of their home online, their pets, their workspaces, them doing work, and we can all view it and see us together as a community. Um,
Okay.
so I would say that's probably one of the biggest things I've seen in distance learning that probably I don't know if a lot of people are talking about. Uh,
I haven't heard this yet. That's a good idea. That's great. Good
but
idea.
using those social media platforms to keep your school community, because if you don't
Mhm.
have those right now, everyone's going to feel so removed from the school and from each other if they're just doing packets and turning them in,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
We have our cheerleaders, putting out videos weekly, our basketball team, so really keeping that community together.
Excellent. So digital communities, basically.
Exactly.
Excellent. All right. So that kind of ties in to the next question, which is, and it sounds like these are motivational strategies. So what are some motivational strategies that you've employed? Okay, it sounds like your school is implementing these cultural elements to help with motivation, to keep people motivated and to feel connected. What are some things that you've done that you've done personally in your classes to keep your kids motivated? What are some motivational theories or ideas you've leaned on? For example, ARC's model. How are you gaining attention? How are you making it relevant to the learners? How do you give them confidence? How do you give them satisfaction? How are you pulling these kinds of things off with your learners?
I mean, obviously, confidence is just, well, you give them positive feedback, constructive criticism, just like you would in the classroom.
Hmm.
Whether you're giving them feedback in a document or, through Zoom. Uh,
Hmm.
this is challenging for everyone, so you really have to make sure to maintain your constructive criticism. Because, technology can be frustrating. So
Hmm.
some people might have a tendency to maybe put it on the kid and kind of like be like, what's going on? Like, you can't do this, right?
Oh my gosh.
Well, so I mean, you really got to maintain that type of criticism where, you're being positive.
Right.
Uh, say that's really important.
The motivational sandwich.
Exactly. And I mean, there's tons of stuff where like we're incentivizing everything. Uh,
Hmm.
if you have 100% work completion during the week, you get in the raffle for a gift card. 100%
Awesome.
100% attendance, same thing. Competitions between homerooms. We're real. These American kids are competitive, so we're
Hmm.
really trying to like tap into that. The
Good.
data, what's cool about all this online learning is the data you can collect. Attendance, work completion, uh, how many minutes they've logged on to their class. Uh, it's crazy the data you can get and tie it to see how the student is doing in online school, basically.
Mm. Okay. So you get a bit more granular with the data. You can see specifically what someone is.
I would say the data is more about engagement, where our data before was tied to like a discrete standard, like this student can use the present perfect tense or not, or
Okay.
this student can write a positive, a pro versus cons paragraph. All right. Right now our data is strictly on engagement. I'm hoping it gets more academic eventually, but we're trying to adjust as we go and keep it simple at first, uh, to so the kids can get used to this new style of learning rather than make it like very high pressure.
Right. Well, it sounds like you did mention earlier that you do have a student focused classroom, and you are. It sounds like everything you're doing is focused on the learners. What about from the teaching side? You mentioned the data, of course, getting the data. What are you doing with it? What do you do with the data once you get it? I mean, how are you acting? You have actionable data. What are you doing with the data
Well,
once you get it?
we're looking for the kids who need high support, right?
Okay.
Right. We're not focusing on the our I would say our learners who really excel right now. We are providing them with activities like competitions they can do outside of school to stimulate their minds.
Hmm.
We're a STEM school, so like engineering projects, stuff they do on their own time. Uh, But that data, we're looking for, those kids who are doing really low and figuring out how to support them. More
Okay.
one-on-one work every day, because they need a lot of a teacher to walk them through every step. They
Okay.
can't just join like 100-person Zoom class and learn like that.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's talk about, so we talked about the past, we talked about the present, let's talk about the future. What do you think? So you mentioned before that you were using Google Classroom before, and you're still, now you're really, sounds like you're probably really leaning on it. How many of these new techniques and new strategies you're using, got a lot of video conferencing, how many of these new tools and strategies and techniques do you think are going to stay with us after this is passed?
It's a good question. Obviously, Google Classroom will stay. It was already there.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if anything, it might get better, where they're going to integrate like video communication within Google Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like one-stop shop, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you think Google would use this as a time to really ramp up, but I mean, they already have Hangouts. But
Mm-hmm.
like nobody's using Google Hangouts for some reason, right?
I used it for my first two interviews, and it was it's Google Meet is what it's the video conferencing, and it was really performing. Let's just say it was not ideal.
I mean, we've had tons of issues with Teams, but what I've realized, kids actually like communicating with each other during class. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they'll stay, and kids working together outside of the classroom on these from home.
Okay.
Yeah, because they didn't know really about Microsoft Teams and Zoom a lot before this. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they'll start to meet. I mean, high schoolers do. When I taught high school, they meet through Skype and stuff.
Right.
But they're getting this at a really young age, in my opinion.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. This is the difference between us and them, right? We didn't have this. I mean, I was analog 100%, right? And these kids are getting this wonderful digital education and experience, whether they like it or not, they're going to be really good at it.
But even in this digital age, I mean, you didn't start like this type of stuff in sixth grade, generally.
No,
So
no.
they're really getting a crash course in it, which I don't know, maybe in the long term you'll see kids with a higher tech capacity
Mm-hmm.
as the future goes on.
Okay.
So I mean, it'd be interesting to do studies, after this, longitudinal studies to see how they compare across generations and things like that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So you mentioned earlier, we talked about the motivational, the competitions and the incentivized learning. Do you think that did they have those kinds of, that kind of motivation, those kind of motivational incentives before? And do you think they'll find that those are very effective? Do you think they'll continue with this moving forward?
Yeah, they used them before. They've changed, obviously. They were effective before, and I mean
Mm-hmm.
they're effective now. Our school, I mean, so I work for a charter network, and we have attendance over 90% right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good. Like if you go to like the other big districts like Aurora Public Schools or Denver Public Schools, I mean
When
they
you say now, do you mean now or do
yeah
you mean before?
no before our attendance has actually gone up. Before our attendance has gone up during digital learning significantly.
Wow.
Yeah. Because we're all like communicate. We're over communicating, making sure the parents are aware. I mean, there's no excuse for not coming to school,
Right.
right?
You don't
You
you don't
gotta
have to leave your house.
exactly. So like, it's so our attendance has gone way up. But I would say in other districts, their attendance numbers are probably way lower.
Hmm.
Well,
Well,
we put together a program where we're really all over the kids and the especially with communication and parent communication and making sure that they have to fill out an attendance survey by like 8:55 every day and be logged on to homeroom or else they're counted absent.
okay. All right. Well, it sounds overall like you're doing a pretty good job there with your school.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. Well, I work for like a very like young, hip charter network, so like they already had like a director of ed tech. Um, we're a one-to-one laptop school, so every kid has a laptop. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. So I mean, we're in a better position than a lot of other schools and districts.
No, fortunate. Good for your kids and good for you. So let's talk about some problems. It doesn't sound like we've hit any big problems so far. You have a pretty positive experience. But what are some of the biggest problems facing
There's a lot of problems.
you now professionally? You've done a good job staying positive in the conversation about it, I guess. So, what are some of the biggest problems? Let's talk about those. We don't, you don't. I don't mean to bring it into the negative. But what are some challenges, and how do you plan to cope with them?
Like I told you, like support. Like how do you teach a kid? Like I work with a lot of kids who read at a first grade level. How am I supposed to do distance learning, right? If when they read at that type of level, teaching sixth grade content, but they read at a first grade level and they don't have their reading support class every day. So I like I told you before, I feel really bad for our high needs learners. I really feel like this is the best platform for them.
Yeah.
And try, just more like the students I don't think they really enjoy the learning as much. It's not, as exciting and engaging because they're not working with other students.
Okay.
So I would like if they could figure out some type of way to do that through Zoom, like bringing these small groups together. I've mentioned it on on multiple occasions during our meetings. Like if we could get more project work and just kind of send them off in their groups within Zoom, right? So and they work together and like producing something maybe by the end of the week, like some type of project.
Yeah. Make it a video, edit a video.
Exactly. So I would, they've really lost that element of, of their education. I would say I would say that's a problem. Tech, Microsoft Teams is real choppy. A lot of kids get kicked out. They've had issues. So that's an issue. It's not always reliable, and certain areas have different internet speeds, right? Different providers. So it's not very equitable for everyone, I would say, which is an issue as well.
Okay. How do you plan to cope with this? What are you going to do how can you fix this?
Well, the thing that right now all the lessons are designed to be asynchronous. They're synchronous. Like the teacher will walk through them and provide support and whatnot, but you can still do it on your own, right? And so that's the key. Like if you're having issues, they're just like, oh, I'm just gonna shut down the call and just do the work on my own. Boom, turn it in. So which was what a lot of kids do, and so they're really missing that social, that engaging element.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's part of education. Half of your experience as a kid growing up and going to school is learning how to deal with other people, right? It's not it's not just the class of coursework, right? Okay, let's talk about your predictions for the future. Here's the most important part. So you have some interesting developments as far as your career is concerned. You've got plans to possibly move abroad again. So what do you see? Let's talk about the industry in general. What do you see? What are your predictions for fall of 2020? That's the next school year starting up. What are your predictions for a year from now, spring 2021? And what do you see in the longer term, 5 years from now, winter 2025? What do you think is going to happen now?
Well, spring 2021 will be interesting because that's when a lot of standardized tests are, which these are big money tests, especially across each schools are funded these ways. It'll be interesting to see the results for those.
How are they going to do that? How are they going to administer the testing?
Well, let's say things are back to normal in spring of 2021, like kids are in school. So like Colorado does CMAS, those scores will be really telling, I think, to see how this whole experiment, well, like the result. This experiment isn't tied to that test, but it will just be interesting to see where these kids, if they've gone up or down on their
Right.
standardized tests when they haven't prepared. Because in real school, we prepare for these tests.
Right.
Like, we'll have like, weeks, but I guess they'll still have the weeks of practice next year.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it would just be interesting to see what happens. I feel I want to see how they test next year.
Yeah. Everybody's that's the proof will be in the pudding, right? Well,
Yeah.
what about fall? Wait a minute. You didn't talk about fall 2020.
I,
You try
I'm
to
more
dodge this question.
I'm more interested in spring. Fall's fall's going to be interesting because what if the kids don't go back in August?
Right.
A lot of districts are banking on that they're going to go back, and so they really haven't put a lot into these e-school programs.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't keep doing the way they're doing things
Mm-hmm.
long term. It's cool, it's just 2 months, and all right, things will get back to normal in August. But if this really goes on for like a year, they really got to go all in on this e-learning and come up with a comprehensive and sophisticated program, kind of like our district is doing.
Mm-hmm.
If my
Well,
if
maybe you could be a model for it. I mean, that's a great you could be.
I mean, we're in a different situation. We don't have a union. Like we're really motivated. We have a lot of low income students. We're really trying to change education results, for the lower income type of students.
Mm-hmm.
We're not unionized. We could be fired in a split second, right?
Uh,
So we got to get results, and we got to do a good job, and we got to work hard.
yeah.
And that will be interesting to see if this really keeps on going. What are these districts going to do? Because, like I said,
Right.
they can't keep going. They can't just like throw some packets out there and not do grades, right? And not really do education. Just like, here's some work, do it, cool. Because
Right.
That's what a lot of districts are really doing right now.
Right. Yeah. Just kind of throw it and see what sticks. Throw it against the wall and see what sticks. Yeah.
So, but if it goes long term, they really got to take this seriously.
Yeah.
And try to make it as more like real schools.
Right. Well, maybe this is the new real. This is the new normal. It'll be interesting to see. What about technology? Do you think? Okay, for testing, let's say we come around next year, spring 2021. My previous interview with Claire Richardson, she's a testing specialist, and she's trying to they're trying to figure out ways to do this. How do you keep this? How are they going to do that? Are they going to abandon the testing, the standardized testing? Or
AP's gone online. SAT's going to go online. They have. I saw an interview because they're like, can't kids cheat? And they're going to record them on their camera while they're taking the test. Basically, it's like some type of assessment monitoring program they're coming up with.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, but IB canceled all their tests this year, so
Wow.
they're not. Those kids will just graduate, and they're not even gonna do the testing portion, which is
wow.
But IB has a project element. You're half assessed with your projects, like your essays and stuff, and the other half is the exams. So they already have something in place that they can assess.
Okay. All right.
AP is exams only.
Okay.
So the AP has to do it online because then they don't have any results.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the only way you can do it. So winter 2025, 5 years from now, look into your crystal ball. I know. Nobody knows, but I mean, what do you think? I have my idea, but what do you think?
I mean, you're going to see a lot. I think you'll see a lot more tech integrated with classes. So like when these type of situations happen, it'll be easier to make the switch. You're also going to see schools start investing more in the hardware. Like my school's a one-to-one laptop school, but a lot of schools aren't like that. If you're not like a super wealthy school, then a lot of kids won't have the hardware to do this type of stuff. So
Hmm.
you're gonna start see them throwing more money in that and providing these type of resources for students, I think.
Okay. All right. And what do you? Okay. Now let's move a little forward and talk be more career centric. Where do you see present and future opportunities in the industry? What do you see for entrepreneurial opportunities, or educational just what do you see the best opportunities for people to impact their learners as well as possibly entrepreneurial? What do you see happening?
Yeah, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, anything with software, um, I think that's beneficial for learning. Like if
Hmm.
you come up with something that really makes it more engaging for students working together. Like right now, like none of these video communication tools have been really designed for like a middle school classroom. Uh,
Right.
right? It would really be nice to see something like that. Uh, teacher and there's like pods or something of kids working together.
Right.
Like just like a normal class. So I would think that would be really cool. Um,
One more.
uh, I mean, you're gonna see they need to be. I mean, this really blindsided a lot of schools.
Of
Uh,
course.
I was
Everybody.
I'm in a
Nobody
fortunate.
planned for this.
Yeah, they need to have the the not just like the hardware but the human capital. I feel like a lot of districts they don't even know who to really talk to for us for this type of stuff.
Hmm.
My school has like a basically an ed tech department, so we were really ready to go. I feel like.
Hmm.
But I have friends who work for like private schools, and they're just really doing school by email. I mean, everybody,
Oh,
the average age there is like 50. So, if this really like hit them in the mouth, if they wanted to do something like my school, they couldn't because they don't have the human capital to get it done.
right. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, most, not everybody is going to, adopt the technology. We talked about this in a previous interview. Claire mentioned that, some teachers they just don't want to, and now they have to. And so they're kind
Exactly.
of limping along, and it's not a, it's, it, you know, you said earlier, we learn by community, we learn from other people, but when you're isolated, it's difficult to learn from other people. And if you're able to use technology and you're able to be comfortable, if you're comfortable with technology, you can reach out, you can use it as a communicative tool. But if you're not, it's very, very isolating and lonely. That's an interesting. I hadn't thought about it, the human capital component. Uh,
Really important. Like I have a friend at a school, and they had a lot of resistance. Like they've been
of
told to have
course.
like yeah, they've been told to have Zoom classes, and they're just like no. Like some teachers just refuse. Right? If I said no, I'd be fired. I
Yeah.
um, so that's what I'm saying. If this stays, people are gonna have to play ball, right?
Right.
They can't just do what they want to do. They got to do what's best for their students.
So it sounds to me like there's an opportunity here to find a way to make the education uh, appealing to the younger learners, the middle school and elementary, as well as a way to make it um, uh, user friendly, or to make it accessible for the older teachers, right?
Exactly. That's why I'd say
Okay.
that's yeah. You're going to want something that's easy to use. That's why Zoom blew up, right? Because it's user friendly,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
So you want something that's easy to use, but it's got to be engaging. What I'm like, a lot of the content right now is just super independent, so it's not engaging, right?
Right.
You're just reading some stuff, answering some questions, right? Filling in some blanks.
Okay. Yeah, it's yeah. You hear a lot of people. This was interesting. I had conversations with people before the pandemic and then after, and a lot of people before were like, "Well, we don't do any online learning. You can't teach online learning to kids." And I said, "Hey, what you need to do is you need to start with 30 minutes a week when they're in kindergarten for online, and then you bump it up to an hour a week in first grade, and so on and so forth. So by the time they're in middle school, they're doing half of their learning online. And even if they're doing it from a classroom, they're still engaging, and they can have video conference with kids. Oh, no, 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 no. But now, now everybody is, talking about their online programs, but basically, like you said, they're basically emailing homework and doing a Skype call, and that's not online learning, right? That's very different. It sounds like what your school is doing is much more in line with online learning and actual education, as opposed to just emailing homework.
Exactly. So I mean, it'll be interesting. Like that's another growth, is getting maybe providing the teacher support for these for e-learning, because
good point.
It's not really there in a lot of places. And like someone who's been 55, close to retirement, they haven't used a lot of this stuff before. So it's, and like they're kind of refusing because they know they can't.
Right.
So,
right.
And it's not their fault, right? Like, where's the support for them? And if you don't work for like a network that like mine, who can provide that type of human capital, that like we have trainings like every Friday, from like someone's leading it, Google Classroom training, Microsoft Teams training, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of other places don't have this. They don't have the human cap, the resources to do this.
Right. Okay. Well, let's wrap up here pretty quickly. I have one more question for you, and this is an opinion. What would you say to as far as education and training professionals are concerned? I mean, this is another industry-wide hypothetical. But what is your call to action? What would you say to anybody in education right now or training? What is your call to action? What can an individual do? I mean, to make this situation better.
I mean, I remember when I did my master's, which was like 2015. I don't know what book it was. This wasn't even an ed tech book. This was like some grammar, old school ESL book that was published in maybe like 1990 or something, right? And they said in that, teachers who do not embrace technology will become extinct, right? So my message would be is to, just like you would tell your students, is don't give up on learning, right? Keep trying to develop yourself, and be ready for changes, and be flexible, and do what's best for your students. Not just what's easy for you.
Right. Get out of your comfort zone. Yeah.
Exactly. And that would be my message for teachers going forward. Is to really embrace the change and obviously it's going to be difficult, but do your best. All right. Don't be so, like, I'm not going to do this. Right. I'm not even like some teachers won't even try. Right.
Can you imagine how would you handle a student like that? Right. I mean, this is the point. This is something that you keep going back to, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but from what I can hear, it sounds like this is a moment for teachers to be students again, and to rely on other teachers, and to rely on to become a learner again. Yeah,
that's a great point. And that's what's happening at my school. We're learning every day. We're learning from each other, and we've been more collaborative than we've been all year, which has been really
awesome.
Which has been really cool. Like, we're all there for each other. During, we can hit each other up on Teams and stuff all the time.
Neil, I don't want to interrupt you. This is a great point, and I want you to keep making it, but you're frozen on my screen. I don't see your video feed anymore.
I don't know what happened, man.
You're just sitting there.
It looks good.
Can you see me?
Yeah, it looks good on my end.
Okay, well, maybe it's recording and I just can't see it. But anyway, okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, but we're really collaborative right now. we're learning a ton from each other, and we're really flexible with our with basically like our curriculum, our whole platform. Like we're using data, you know, every couple of weeks and see if we really what type of changes we should make. Uh,
Okay.
and yeah, it's been cool. Everybody's been really helpful with each other. Like I told you, we've been like, more collaborative than we ever have. Um,
Awesome.
so yeah, there's been a lot of good to come out of it, I would say.
Good. Well, you know, sounds like your school's got it together. And you know, it sounds like you're doing a lot of things really well. You know, of course, there's some things that fall through the gaps, but
Yeah, I would say they are. I would say they're definitely a good model to study for this. Obviously, things aren't perfect. Like
hmm
if you were to look at like a lot of the quality work for a lot of students, right? It's not looking that great for some, you know, as it would in real school,
hmm
let's say. You know, because they're not getting the support, they're not working with each other as much. It's a lot more independent. Uh,
hmm
but which I think is the big thing to focus on going forward. How can you
hmm
increase learning? How can you engage students in this?
Right. Well, that's $1 trillion question. It's a trillion now, no more billion, right? Is there anything else you'd like to add, Neil? You've had a great interview. I appreciate you taking the time and for answering the questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything else that comes to mind that I may have missed?
No, things like we talked about a lot,
Yeah,
man.
we covered a lot. All right.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having me, Bernie.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. Hey, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll keep talking.
All right.